Hello, everybody, and welcome to your Wednesday webinar with Squibbler. Today, we're going to focus on settings and how you can create settings that feel like a character. So in this webinar, you are going to learn how to understand how setting can function as a character with personality, agency, and relationships. We will take a look at some successful literary and film examples of setting as character. And then there are some practical exercises at the end for developing setting if you'd like to work on this. So some things to think about with respect to setting. I was thinking about this quote from Carmen Maria Machado from her work In the Dream House. And she says that places are never just places in a piece of writing. If they are, the author has failed because setting is not inert. It's activated by point of view. And too often we find that settings are treated just as backdrops. They're static environments where characters move through the stories. But some of the most memorable fiction and screenplays treat setting as a living, breathing character that actively participates in the narrative. So in this webinar, we'll discover how to transform your settings from passive backgrounds into dynamic forces that can influence character decisions and emotional states. They can also serve to create conflict and tension. They can reflect and amplify the themes that you're working with. You can create settings that possess their own personality and voice. And you can also create settings that evolve and change throughout your story, just as your characters do. So there is a lot of importance to developing your settings, because when readers remember your story years later, they often remember the feeling of a place as much as they remember the characters. Think about something like Hogwarts in the Harry Potter series, or the moors in Wuthering Heights, or the town of Maycomb in To Kill a Mockingbird. These settings are not just locations. They're not static in these examples. They're characters with their own presence, personality, and power. So take a look at the difference between when you're writing about a setting with character versus when you're not. So here's a quick example. Instead of writing something like the old house was creaky and dark, here's how you can infuse character in a revision. The house seemed to inhale when Sarah entered, its floorboards sighing under her weight, as if she'd been holding her breath for decades, waiting for her return. In this case, the house has been personified. It now has the qualities of a person. A setting becomes a character when it possesses the fundamental qualities that we associate with human beings. Let's take a look at some ways that we can accomplish doing this. Just like people, places can have distinct personalities and moods. A setting can be welcoming, it can be hostile, mysterious, transparent, ancient, or vibrant with youth. I was thinking about, as I was working on this webinar, Guillermo del Toro's movie Crimson Peak, where the Gothic mansion is an entity all on its own. It feels imposing, it's malevolent and dangerous, and Del Toro even explained that the house to him was a real creature, a real monster in the movie. So character-like settings don't just exist, they also act. They have their own agency and influence. They can influence events, create obstacles, and provide opportunities for your characters. A setting that does almost all of these very well is Hogwarts and its surrounding landscapes. There are challenges and obstacles lurking in every part of the magical realm, whether it's the school building, whether it's near Hagrid's cabin, or the lake in front of the school, and even the forests that surround the campus. Settings can also have their own history and memory. Like characters, they can carry their past with them. And previous events can shape settings. They can leave scars, create strengths and vulnerabilities. Some of the best examples of this in genre are in the Gothic genre, especially in horror and Gothic film and books. So here's an example from Shirley Jackson's famous horror novel, The Haunting of Hill House. Notice how she's going to personify the house itself. Hill House, not sane, stood by itself against its hills, holding darkness within. It has stood for 80 years and might stand 80 more. Within, walls continued upright. Bricks met neatly. Floors were firm and doors were sensibly shut. Silence lay steadily against the wood and stone of Hill House, and whatever walked there walked alone. It's a very gloomy, moody atmosphere, but it's also creating life in something that is not alive. Settings can also form relationships with the characters, and these are relationships can evolve. A place might start as an enemy, for example, and then become a sanctuary, or vice versa. For this, I was thinking about the popular Jim Henson film Labyrinth, which is initially very frustrating to the young protagonist, Sarah, who's trying to locate her kidnapped baby brother. But by the end of the movie, she's come to terms with that alternate universe. And her world and the world of the labyrinth actually integrate somewhat by the end of the film. Your settings can also grow and change. Dynamic settings can evolve throughout your story. They can reflect your character arcs, they can become a mirror for them, and they can also help with thematic development. In the young adult novel and film Holes, Stanley overcomes the challenges of the unforgiving boot camp he's been sent to and is trapped in. And he does end up growing and finding redemption from his family curse, a lot of that influenced by the barren Texas landscape he's in. Settings can also develop voice and communication. They can speak through sensory details with atmosphere and symbolic elements. They can also communicate without words to influence characters. Think about how you go how you feel when you go somewhere and you feel uncomfortable in that area. That's something you can develop in your own writing about settings. You can also intensify these sensory details in your settings by using the describe function in Squibbler, and we'll take a look at how to do that in just a moment. So if you want to develop your setting as a character versus a backdrop, there are several ways to accomplish this, and we'll take a look at some examples as well. So here's an example of a setting that isn't well developed. It's just a backdrop. So it's the backdrop setting. It says the cafe was busy and noisy. Maria sat at a corner table and waited for her date. There's nothing wrong with that. It tells us exactly what's going on. But if you compare that with the revision, this is going to have a lot more character development. The cafe buzzed with an almost nervous energy, as if it fed off the first date jitters and whispered confessions of its patrons. Maria chose the corner table, the cafe's quietest confidant, where the worn velvet cushions seemed to absorb her own anxious fidgeting. So you'll notice that here Maria's behavior is reflected in her surroundings. Notice how the second example is going to give the cafe personality. It's got a nervous energy. It's feeding off emotions. It's got its own agency. It's choosing to be quieter in corners. And it has a relationship with Maria. The cushion she's sitting on is absorbing her anxiety. Some other techniques, of course, are to personify and anthropomorphize your writing and your settings, and give your settings human qualities. Let your setting respond to events. Walls can lean in to listen to conversations. Your floors might groan in disapproval. Wind in the hallways can whisper warnings. All of these can create, a personality for the setting you're developing. You can also use physical characteristics. Buildings can have faces. Windows can be the eyes, doors can be the mouth, landscapes can have moods, weather can have intentions. A great example of this is Edgar Allan Poe's short story, The Fall of the House of Usher, where the decaying Usher house mirrors the destruction of the Usher family bloodline. You can also use emotional states for your settings. Describe the emotional conditions. Is the forest that the character going through melancholy? Is the city restless? Is the house lonely? You can even create settings as elements in Squibbler and then develop and describe those elements, settings with human characteristics. So another way to develop your settings is to create personality by using the five senses. You can use sight. What does your setting choose to reveal or to hide? And what about the sound in that setting? What is the setting's unique voice or rhythm? And smell. What memories or emotions does your setting carry in its scent? And with touch, how does your setting physically interact with the characters around it? You can even consider taste. What flavor does a setting leave in your mouth? Bitter, sweet, metallic, musty. These are all things that you can develop. So we'll take a quick look at how to do this with Squibbler's AI using the describe function with a setting. So I'm going to open up my document that I have here that is about setting. And it's the wrong one. Go back. So this is the setting. And so I've already written a short passage here, and I want to show you how you can use the describe function to personify or build on what you already have. So this is a Gothic example. It's about an estate that's looming against the sky. It's got twisted spires and crumbling battlements reaching toward them. I'll make it a little bit larger. And it does have some personification already. It has the stones seeming to whisper secrets. But if you want to use the describe function in our AI, you can go to the Smart Writers AI tasks, down to describe, and then you'll get the 5 senses: sight, smell, taste, sound, touch, and you can even create a metaphor. You'll just select the ones that you want to use, deselect any that you don't want to. I'm going to leave them all, and then you'll click describe. What's going to happen is the AI will take this passage that you've highlighted, and it can be a paragraph, a sentence, a phrase, 2 paragraphs, and it's going to rewrite this for me with sight-based, smell-based, touch-based, and sound-based. So we're going to have things like the windows with iron bars are revealing nothing but shifting shadows in the sight-based one. With smell-based, it says that the smell is inescapable, permeating every nook and cranny of the once grand mansion. Taste, it has the taste of decay and lost hope. That's quite creepy. And with sound-based, it's going to have the wind howling through the spires and so forth, and the sound of footsteps as if something was lurking in the shadows, and so forth. There's a touch and a metaphor one as well. So this is a really good way to develop your settings with the describe function in Squibbler. You can also create setting arcs, much in the way that you do with your characters. Settings can undergo transformations. In the beginning, you might have an abandoned factory looming like a sleeping giant with broken windows like closed eyes, keeping its secrets locked away. But as our protagonist, Sarah, explores the factory, it seems to stir, with dust motes coming up in the light, as if her presence was slowly awakening something that's been dormant for a long time. By the end of the story, we can have the factory breathing again. Sarah has fixed it up. The machinery is humming with purpose. It's no longer abandoned, but it's been reborn, and it's a phoenix of steel and steam. So you can create a character arc as well for your settings. You can also establish setting relationships. Look at how your protagonist and your antagonist, how those plots are written, and considering how your setting relates to them and any other important characters in your novel or screenplay. You might even create a character arc for your characters and then a setting arc for your setting that mirrors the two. One way to establish a setting relationship is with the mentor setting. This is going to be a place that guides, protects, and teaches your protagonists. This could be something like Hogwarts is to Harry Potter in those series. A setting can also be an antagonist. It can be a place that opposes or challenges or threatens your characters. This is Hill House in The Haunting of Hill House. It's a malevolent entity on its own. It could be something like a survival or a thriller screenplay or novel that you might be writing, where the forest can be very challenging and opposing the person who's trying to stay alive. You might also consider the ally setting. This is going to be a place that supports and aids your characters in their journey. Rivendell serves this function in The Fellowship of the Ring. The elves are welcoming to the hobbits here, and they welcome them in and let them rest and take care of them. You could also establish a mirror setting. This is going to be a place that reflects your character's internal state or growth. And unfortunately for Roderick and Madeline Usher in the Fall of the House of Usher, their house, the Usher house, is decaying, and that's also mirroring or symbolizing the Usher family's physical and moral decay as well. A couple of things that go with genre and creating a setting that can be a character. If you're thinking about fantasy settings, you might think about how magical forests can test their heroes, or cities that might remember ancient magic, and mountains that choose who gets to pass. Let your magic system infuse your settings with consciousness as well. A good film series to watch with this in mind is The Lord of the Rings. There are so many things that go on in so many different settings there that they become like characters. With science fiction, you could set up space stations with AI personalities. You could have planets with collective consciousness. You could have cities that evolve. You can use technology to create truly alien setting characters as well. The Enterprise to me is an iconic setting to review because it does seem to have a life of its own. For those of you writing historical fiction, you can use this as well. Think about how the historical period can be reflected in the settings you're writing about. Let them have a personality. So you could have the Jazz Age as a giddy and reckless friend. You could have the Victorian England setting as a stern, proper parent. You could have the Wild West be an unpredictable gambler. The television series Deadwood from HBO is a great example of how setting and character connect. The city is filthy, the people that are there are dangerous, and it's just, the setting really influences and mirrors the way the characters act. Uh, you can even use this with contemporary fiction settings. Modern settings have characters as well. There could be a coffee shop where people go to talk over issues. That could be like a therapy for them. You could have a subway that connects more than people. It can connect your characters. You could have a small town that remembers everyone's secrets. You can probably even think of some of these sets from modern TV comedy. These are places that influence the characters that they're in. So some examples to look for in books and in film, if you want to do your own, review. A good example is Manderley, The Estate and Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. It's also a film based on the book. The estate here is not just a house. It's a character with memory. It's holding on to jealousy. It's got the power to intimidate. It's going to hold on to the past, and it resists the new Mrs. De Winter, almost as if Rebecca's ghost inhabits the very walls. Another example, this one from horror, is the Overlook Hotel from the book The Shining and the movie The Shining. The book is by Stephen King, and the movie is directed by Stanley Kubrick. The hotel here is predatory in both the film and in the book. It feeds off of the isolation and madness that the characters experience. It has an appetite, it has memory, and it has a dark, malevolent intent to it. It actively corrupts Jack and tries to possess Danny. Another example is from Gatsby's East and West Egg in The Great Gatsby. Those two locations represent different aspects of the American dream. The old money of the East Egg and the new money of the West Egg. Tradition is the East Egg versus aspiration of the new world, the West Egg. These are not just places, they're symbols with personalities that even judge the characters. So for practice, you can, of course, pause the video and work on this and think about writing a paragraph describing your setting using all 5 senses, but personify each sensation. Use a human quality. And of course, you can do this using Scribbler's AI with the describe function. Think about what a setting might choose to show you visually. What does it whisper or shout? When you're out in the woods and the wind is blowing, it really does feel like you're hearing whispers or murmurs sometimes. What memories does the scent of this setting carry? How does it embrace or reject touch? And what flavor does it leave as its signature? If someone leaves the place, do they still have a taste in their mouth? You can also write a scene where your setting actively opposes your character's goal if you're working on developing your setting and your character. And your setting can create a physical obstacle that reflects the emotional conflict your character might be going through. You can use weather, architecture, natural features as weapons against your character. You can use it to force your character to make a difficult choice. Maybe their boat is sinking and the waves are relentless. You can also use it to reveal something about your character through the conflict it has with the setting. Another thing that you could try practicing is writing about one of these 5 different options. You could write about a library that only reveals the books that you need to read, not the ones you want to read, but the ones that you need to. You could have a city that rearranges its streets based on citizens' emotions. You could have a house that's slowly forgetting its own rooms as it ages. You could have a forest that ages backwards, growing younger as you go deeper. Or a cafe that serves exactly what its customers' souls need, not what their physical needs are. So one thing that you could take away from this is an action plan for your own settings. I'm definitely going to try this myself in the book I'm working on. Start small. Choose one setting in your current work and apply some of these techniques that you've learned from this webinar in it. It's a good idea to study the people that do this well. Look at the masters. You can look at some of those examples that we've shared through this webinar. Read to see how successful authors bring their settings to life. Practice regularly. Write setting-focused scenes and exercises or revise with your setting in mind. And then, of course, get feedback. Share your character and settings relationships with other writers and readers. You're welcome to share this to our Discord server and get some feedback. And then you want to revise with purpose. Go back to your work specifically to strengthen your setting characterization. So in this webinar, we have taken a look at how we can understand setting as a character, where we can develop personality, agency, relationships, conflict with setting. We took a look at some literary and film examples of setting as character. Hopefully those will be helpful to you. And we took a look at some practical exercises we can do for developing setting. Thank you for joining this exploration of creating setting that feel like characters. Your fictional worlds are definitely waiting to come alive, and you don't want to just end up with a static background setting. Give your settings the chance to be more than just places where things happen. Make them participants that can reflect things like theme, conflict, character in the magic of your storytelling. If you have any questions or you want to discuss any of these points, feel free to jump into our Discord server, and I'd love to talk to you about it or read anything that you've written with respect to your settings. Thanks as always for joining us, everybody, and we appreciate you, and we will see you next week.